like to thank Nachshon Rodrigues Pereira for joining us all the way from Amsterdam and leading us in this beautiful tefillah, soulful, mournful, quite moving tefillah. We are grateful always for your time with us, Nachshon. And I asked Nachshon this year to speak about a project which is close to his heart, how to rebuild Jewish life. It has kind of multiple meanings. One, because of course the Jewish community in Amsterdam was decimated in the Holocaust. Massive amounts of Jews, and in particular, of course, related to our community, Portuguese Jews, the Sephardic community, was terribly affected by the Holocaust, as was the broader Jewish community in Amsterdam. And of course, in recent years, Nachshon has set about establishing a new Jewish community in Amsterdam, Bendigamos. So I thought he might have an interesting perspective on this subject of how to rebuild Jewish life. Thank you, Nachshon.
Thank you, Rabbi Morris. Thank you also for being here. And even though it's Tisha B'Ab, it's really beautiful to be with this community, beautiful old building with ancient traditions and such great participation today and last night. Also, please feel free to come closer. This is not a lecture. It's not like university where you try to sit as far in the back as possible. So please come closer, easier to hear. How to rebuild Jewish life, Jewish communal life. Topic was suggested by the rabbi. We're not allowed today to study Torah, as that is a source of profound joy, which is interesting if you think about it. There may be some days that some of us are not actively studying Torah texts, although surely a large part of us is studying the ways of the Torah and Torah values, performing all kinds of mitzvot. Do we take the Torah for granted? Because it's always there. It feels interesting not to be allowed to study the Torah on a day like this. Maybe it's not just because it gives us joy, but maybe also to make us feel what it's like not to have the Torah at our disposal. What would our lives be like? Let's think about it for a second. If there was no Torah, what would our lives be like? What would the world be like? And not being able to learn from it for just one day, it's maybe there just to make it appreciate even more. Taking things for granted. Did we take the temple in Jerusalem for granted? Let's keep this in mind for a second when we look at today's topic, how to rebuild Jewish life. I'm not here to say that I have the magic answer, and also I'm not going to tell you about the success of Bendigamos for half an hour, and it's not going to be like that. But I do have some experience, of course, from building Bendigamos, from scratch, not really from scratch, because, of course, we have centuries or millennia of wisdom and community building. But of course, in the Second World War, our community was decimated. But because the rabbi came up with this topic, it does imply that the Jewish communal life is not where it should be. It's not optimal, and that's why it's a good topic for Tisha B'Ab. So I'm not going to make it too happy, because we also have to mourn. So let's look at how we're doing. And maybe it depends on how you look at it. Because we have a Jewish country. It's different than during 90 years ago, for example. A lot of people in the world are studying Torah. Some say that in history, never have so many Jewish people been into a yeshiva, for example. Of course, we have challenges, both internal and external. Externally, there's anti-Semitism, of course, and dare I say, a lack of good leadership, pretty much all over the world. Anti-Semitism is a strong and dangerous virus and impacts us strongly, all of us. I would also say that this anti-Semitism is not just our problem or attacking us. I think that's what's going on right now, is attacking society as a whole. I don't know if it's an expression in English as well. In Dutch, we say that we are the canary in the coal mine. Do you say that? So, and this impact, I'm from Amsterdam. I've seen horrible attacks in Amsterdam recently, but also in Amsterdam, we've looked at London. I don't even see everything that's happened here, but we've seen very horrible and worrisome events and attacks going on here. And in turn, Jews all over the world have felt this several times or constantly after October 7th, but also after attacks on Bondi Beach, Washington, D.C., Melbourne Synagogue, all kinds of Israeli embassies, and many other instances, even too many to remember over the past 3 years even. So I don't want to make this into a presentation, but I do think it's good to share some numbers so that we can share the perspective on the situation of how the Jewish world is doing. So aside from the amount of victims that we have had to mourn and that a lot of Jewish people are feeling less safe, this is also one of the reasons to make Aliyah. And in the UK, about 0.2% makes Aliyah each year. We had 742 in 25. In France, though, it was more than 3 times as much, 0.64%. And some Israelis actually are moving back to Western Europe, but they tend to be less active in local synagogues. So if we look at the numbers, Western Europe is still doing okay, but people are making Aliyah. However, if we look at the demographic numbers of the most recent JPR research, they did a survey all across Europe. You could see that some of our challenges are bigger. If we look at intermarriage rates and birth rates, honestly, the UK is doing pretty good. Like in the whole world, the UK is scoring in the top 5, which means that 78% of adult married people have a Jewish partner right now. In the Netherlands, for example, that's 43%. Jewish fertility in the UK is also quite well, with 2.5 children per woman, and in the Netherlands, that's 1.3. However, the numbers are going down, and especially in the younger generations. So another thing that we cannot take for granted, that the numbers will stay up in the UK as they are, and you can see in Amsterdam what happens if we don't work on it. Because really, Amsterdam, just imagine 1.3 birth rate. We have an intermarriage rate in Amsterdam of 85% for the younger generation. So that's really, really insane, very alarming. Some people call it the silent Holocaust. And the amount of Jews that have left the community, in just 20 years, the Dutch Jews they lost about 30% of the Jews just by demographics and, of course, people dying or making Aliyah. But 1/3 in 20 years, those are huge numbers. So actually, from Amsterdam, we can be jealous. I can be jealous of the UK numbers of how many Jewish kids go to Jewish schools, the percentage of people going to shul here, how many people feel that Shabbat is important to them. It's about 1/3, both those numbers in England. Also in the Netherlands, we have a very high rate of unaffiliated Jews. Also, this number is 85% of Jews that are not members of any Jewish organization. This is, by the way, for a big part caused by trauma of the Second World War. This is a bit different in the UK, and fortunately it's different. It's a 40-minute flight, more or less, from where you are to where I live. And a lot of people do not really realize the impact of the Second World War that it had on Jewish life, especially the Netherlands. The Netherlands has been a bit unique compared to other European countries because the percentage of people killed in the community was so large. It was 90%, 80% of all the Jews, 90% of the Portuguese community, for example. We went from 4,000 families to 400 families. It's not like when the war is over, you just continue where you left off and you start building again. That's not how it works. People came back. They were completely, of course, traumatized. A lot of them couldn't even just pick up their lives because their house was gone, their stuff was gone, their passport was taken away. Sometimes they got fines and taxes from the municipalities for the years they'd been gone. Actually, they had to also pay for their own train tickets to the east. So then some of them, they went abroad. There were many of them that didn't really want to be Jewish anymore for all kinds of reasons, maybe because they felt God had forsaken them, or because they were scared. It's not like anti-Semitism was gone suddenly from 1945. Some people want to have children but couldn't have children. They couldn't find Jewish partners. Some of them had been hidden with Christian families. It was difficult to get away from those families. So if you take all of this into account, you can imagine we couldn't just start rebuilding Jewish life there. And then, of course, the children of the generation that survived the war also didn't often have a good time in their families. A lot of trauma, difficult to discuss emotions, a lot of conflicts. Their personal needs were not always attended to because the parents often had a lot to deal with themselves. I'll give you two examples. One example is a woman I talked to a few years ago. And when she was 12 years old, she had broken her leg. And for a mother, this wasn't an event, an issue that she wanted to take care of because nothing compared to the suffering in the war, so it wasn't really relevant, and people shouldn't make so much of an issue of it. So this girl walked around with a broken leg for a week. And then after a week, the mother took her to the hospital, and she didn't say, "Hi, my daughter has a broken leg, can you please help her, can you heal her?" But she said instead, "My daughter doesn't stop crying and shouting, can you please make it stop?" So this is a bit of an extreme example, of course, but this is someone who is now 50-ish years old, and this is a generation of people leading our community. I'm not saying everyone is like this. I'm saying this is what trauma looks like, and it's big. It has a real impact, and it makes that people are not really, working on let's build a future together. Let's be happy. Let's invest in the young generations. It's really there's too much suffering. Another example from closer by, my grandfather from my mom's side, Zichrono Livracha, he passed away 2 years ago. He had to see how most of his family was killed during the Second World War. He came back with only a few people. Fortunately, he was working for Philips, and they took care of their staff. But he went to the camps, but a couple of times he was taken out of the row to be killed. And he had a solution not to have to feel that pain anymore, the pain that he has when someone close to you is taken away from you like that. And his solution was not to let anyone get too close to him anymore, just to keep emotional distance from everyone around him so that if something would happen, Chas v'Chalila, he wouldn't feel the pain. He was the one raising my mother and my aunts. That's the generation above me. They were often raised by people who were not emotionally available to their children. That's what trauma looks like, and if you're not able to solve that in your own generation, it will go on to the next generation. So that's why we speak about a third generation of Jews that are carrying this, especially in continental Europe, and the fourth generation. Now, this is Second World War that ended over 80 years ago. Imagine what's going on right now with our people and in Israel, what's happened after October 7th, the amount of trauma that's happening in that country, and with our people, but also here, we have to deal with a lot of things. So, for sure, part of building the Jewish community has to start with healing and to understand what's going on, and also to find a place where we can heal these traumas together and to look to the future, even when it's difficult. With regards to anti-Semitism, some of you know I'm a political scientist, and I cannot tell you how this is going to develop. I do think many of us have a plan B, that we realize at some point maybe we'll have to do something else. But I do think that we have a shared responsibility to combat anti-Semitism, not just to protect ourselves and the Jewish community, but I think to defend modern society as it is right now, and to promote safety, security, and freedom in all of our countries. And I think this is also something that the Torah supports. I also think that it includes to not be tolerant towards intolerance. This is something that's been very difficult in Western Europe, for example, also in the Netherlands, We've learned that intolerance is really horrible and it leads to the worst things. But what happens when there's intolerance? Do you have to be tolerant to intolerance? It's like something we haven't really found out yet, but I think the answer is not to be tolerant towards intolerance. And anti-Semitism is not new. Jacob, our ancestor Jacob suffered from it, our ancestors in Egypt, and every generation since. And despite everything, we're still here. We're mourning our temple for almost 2,000 years. We're mourning recent losses. Who are not mourning their recent losses? The Romans, the Greeks, the Egyptians, the Aztecs, the Babylonians, the massive, invincible empires that thought they would live forever. They're gone, but we're still here. Why? Because the Jewish people, we have our faith in God, we have God on our side, we are dedicated to the Torah, and it keeps us strong and it keeps us together. And if we look back in history, or just if we read the Torah or the book of prophets, one moment the Jewish people thrive, and the next moment we suffer immense losses. And usually this is the moment that we start taking things for granted. We start complaining, we assimilate, we don't treat each other respectfully, we feel that the laws are not for us. And once a certain percentage of people disconnects, we lose more and more of our strength. The Talmud, by the way, in Kiddushim, tells us that the Torah is a sum tam, a perfect elixir. So whatever is happening in the world right now, and how scary some of it may be, surely if we do not tap into that strength, things are going to be much harder than if we do use this. And how do we do that? How do we use that strength? I mean, it's very obvious to say, the cliches, do tikkun olam, take responsibility, contribute to your community, and work on your circle of influence. Within your sphere of influence, try to be good, spread positive vibes, and learn Torah, of course. But I do want to add a few suggestions, things that I've seen at Bendigamos. We were able to grow a community, build a community, starting with a very, very small group of people. We wanted to grow Jewish life, which means not to try to take people from other synagogues that are already going to synagogue, but really to rekindle the light of people that are looking to do more with their Judaism, to make them enthusiastic, to inspire them to come to synagogue, to learn our traditions, to be more active and more observant in a Jewish community. And fortunately, we have been able to do that. We have celebrated our 11th anniversary this year, and we had about 80 events. And something I'm really happy about is that a lot of people feel comfortable or welcome, or I think the word is comfortable with our tradition. For example, this Yom Kippur, we expect about 20 young people to form a choir together, and they'll be leading the slichot. But pretty much everyone in synagogue is able to sing along, so that's something I'm really excited about. For example, I remember some Yom Kippurs where it was just a handful of us participating for most of the service. So some of the suggestions. Like I started, it's important not to take things for granted. We cannot assume that the next generation will automatically find a Jewish partner, that they feel positive about Judaism or Israel, and feeling part, something that we care all about here, feeling part of synagogue life. The situation outside the UK is already alarming. In the UK, it's not alarming, but we can see if we take things for granted and we think, oh, things will just automatically go well, or other people will take care of it, it'll be fine, it's not my responsibility, things can go south quickly. The second suggestion I want to do is to consider us as one big Jewish people. What do I mean by that? I mean, we're not just a synagogue, we're not just the Jewish religion, we're the Jewish people. And apology for making a metaphor using food, I want to make a metaphor using pizza. Imagine, actually I didn't come up with this, there's a Dutch scientist who said that the Jewish identity is like a pizza with 5 different toppings. He called it something else, but I made it into a pizza. The Jewish identity consists of a pizza with a topping religion. There's the topping of Israel, the topic of Jewish culture, the topic of being connected through your bloodline, family, and then there's our shared history of oppression and the wars and everything like that. And basically, every Jewish identity would have some of those toppings on the pizza. For some of them, if you ask them, what does your ideal pizza look like? Many here would have maybe a large part of religion and a large part of synagogue, a bit of Israel, a bit of our history, a bit of being part of the Jewish people, some of the culture. Some people would have a lot of Jewish culture. Some people would have mostly Israel. Some people would have mostly religion. But every single Jew has a pizza and has toppings that they like. And also, everyone has a point where they are right now in their Jewish life and where they want to be eventually. So my vision for Jewish Netherlands and for Bendigamos, but I think it's something that all of us could maybe take into consideration, is that a Jewish community, because if it's not organized Judaism, where else would they find it, are here to help every Jew with every pizza, no matter what's on their pizza, to help them go on that journey, to move them forward on that journey. So where they are right now, what they know, their observance level, the amount of Jews in their fellow Jews that they have in their life, their knowledge, that they will go from where they are now to where they will be. Also in the UK, it's important to facilitate that journey, because 75% of the UK Jews, for example, have not embraced the Shabbat yet. Many of them live in London. Everyone who really wants to be in synagogue every Shabbat, right now, they're already in synagogue. But this 65% of Jews are not there yet. So how can we get to them? And like I said, also at Bendigamos, most of the community was not keeping Shabbat, but some of them are starting to. So what does it mean to be there for all the different pizzas? Basically, if you help them to stimulate their appetite, and they start eating some of the community events for Jewish culture, and actually generally they like food, or they like to have some of the lecture about the war, for example, or they come to a holiday but more for social reasons, and they start eating some slices in your environment. They will actually may inspire them to try other things and to try some of the other toppings. And the total amount of pizza that's being eaten, that's your Jewish community. That's how large your community is. So if you stimulate their appetite and they start eating more, that's growing your Jewish life. So that's basically what we're trying to do. We try to create an environment that's happy, that's safe, and where they can just try things. And we know, we trust, but we also have seen it, that they start eating more. And some of them may not become regular synagogue goers, some of them may not become religious. But the fact that every single Jew becomes activated and does the thing that they contribute to, that's how it's going to work. If you have 100 Jews, maybe 10 of them will be here now and then, and 2 of them may be here every week, and some of them will give a donation, and some of them will get married here. But you need to have all of those 100 in order to get to the optimal numbers. So we have in London, in Amsterdam, we have 85%. In London, you have 65% of UK Jews that you can inspire to do more. My third suggestion is to proactively lead this journey. I think one of the most important factors in this day and age is fun, and for people to take baby steps, giving them maybe some responsibility, and not to have any judgments. I want to say that I think the Spanish and Portuguese community is very important in this facilitating this journey, especially for this generation. We have modern yet, we have intellectual, authentic Judaism. We're not afraid of questions. We're worldly, but we keep to the halacha. We have beautiful decorum, beautiful melodies. We have beautiful buildings. We have openness. So I think our way of living goes very well with the young and highly educated generation. And I see that I have to slowly start to come to an end, but I want to just do the last three suggestions quickly. I want to say something about the loyalty ladder. This comes from marketing. There's a loyalty ladder. At the beginning, we have customers that may be a prospect, and then you have people that start buying now and then they become more loyal, they become members, then eventually they become ambassadors. So this is a journey, this takes time. What you want to do is to help everyone on their journey until they become enthusiastic about your community. And you do that by every time when they come, you make sure they come when it's a time that works for them, and they have a good experience, and they move up a little bit up the ladder. And what you want to do is to make sure that their commitment, but also their for example, the donations they make or the contribution they make is it matches the place they are on the ladder. So, for example, at Bendigamos, I make a financial example. I don't know if it works for London, but what we do, of course, there's membership levels, and membership is expensive. But when they're not members yet, but they're just like happy customers, we give them like a friend rate. And in the meantime, we ask them for other kind of donations, but we try to match where they are right now into what we ask from them. So that's the loyalty ladder. And I think Jewish communities in this century are, for most part, maybe about relationship management more than anything else. Last two. Number 5 is critical mass. It's really important to have, especially in this day and age, people want to see when they come in to any event, they want to see 4 or 5 peers, 3, 4, 5 peers. So one of the reasons that Bendigamos, this is really not something to do here, but it could be something for events. We prefer to have 1 or 2 bigger events than 4 or 5 small ones. And we do the same for Shabbat mornings. We have Shabbat morning every other week we have a service, because I prefer to have 2 Shabbatot with 50 or 60 people than 4 with 20 or 30. Again, this is not a suggestion to do here, but just for the idea, because the chance that people will come in and they see, wow, this is cool, and they come back, it's much higher. So that's critical mass, but it doesn't just work for synagogues, for synagogue services, it works for everything. And the last thing, that's the last suggestion, and that's what I want to end with, is to trust the process. I've been doing Bendigamos for 11 years, but before that, I've been active in other synagogues for a long time. And a lot of people thought that it wasn't worth spending money or time into, inspiring people that seem not to be so interested or seem to be further away. And I want to tell you to trust the process. We have been around, the Jewish people have been around for thousands of years. We shouldn't take things for granted. If we keep the right balance between staying genuine, but translate this is really important, to new generations, we show good leadership by putting the mission before ourselves. We bring fun. We create a happy and healthy environment. We proactively help Jews on their journey and let them explore their pizza and stimulate and inspire that, and also for them to eat the topping of religion in the synagogue. Then, if we do all this, surely we will all merit that we will continue to mourn our temples together with more and more people until the third temple will be rebuilt.